Okay, so the new Speaker for the House is Mike Johnson. Why? Come on, Republicans. Was that really your best foot forward? Mike Johnson, after all that? Mike Johnson is the one you come up with. Well, at least he can't be as bad as McCarthy unless he's, as long as he's not a complete milquetoast. So we'll see. Let's check out the first thing he did in this story from Eric Boehm. Johnson said, "The greatest threat to our national security is our nation's debt. We know this is not going to be an easy task, and tough decisions will have to be made, but the consequences, if we don't act now, are unbearable." Okay, debt bad. Pretty good so far. So what's he going to do about it? He's going to establish a bipartisan debt commission to begin working on this crisis immediately. Johnson, there's already such a commission. It's called Congress. You're in charge of it now. That's kinda Congress's job, right? To figure out all the budget and debt stuff. And it's the House, too. Because that's where all that originates. The power of the purse originates in the House. Boehm agrees with me. Congress is quite literally a bipartisan commission tasked with managing the debt. And there's also a budget committee, which is, of course, a bipartisan group of lawmakers, and they determine all sorts of budget stuff, including when there's been too much borrowing. So yes, the very notion of a new and special bipartisan commission that's going to do the thing Congress is already supposed to be doing is a little funny and more than a little redundant. Yeah, right. Hang on a second. Okay, sorry about that. You know how those random edits can be. Okay, let's go through this and see if we can take it just a little bit more seriously. We have the Committee for a Responsible Federal Budget. They've been advocating for such a commission. They argue that special congressional task forces can focus discussions, generate greater public awareness of major issues, and create the opportunity for lawmakers to put all ideas on the table. And an example they used in '83 when Social Security was approaching insolvency, which it is again. The only difference is last time they weren't in complete denial about it. A commission of congressional leaders and presidential appointees worked out a series of potential fixes. Afterwards, Congress enacted many of these reforms, making Social Security solvent for another 5 decades. Which, if you do the math, that's what we're coming up on. And he talks about it doing again with Barack Obama, except they never did any of that stuff. Alright. And the moderate lawmakers in the Bipartisan Problem Solvers Caucus. They've endorsed the idea, polling by the Peter G. Peterson Foundation, who named their kid Peter Peterson, which advocates for balancing the budget, shows that majorities of both Republican and Democratic voters support the formation of such a commission. The commission's recommendations would receive priority consideration by Congress and will be scheduled for a final vote during the lame duck session after the 2024 election. That timing reveals the real reason why members of Congress like this, because it allows them to avoid accountability for doing the thing they're supposed to be doing in the first place. Yep, we're not going to do anything until after 2024, after the election, so that voters won't be able to retaliate against us. Yep. No. See, I'm on the commission. You can vote for me because we're doing good work on the commission. And then after that, you do whatever. Alright, so Johnson said this will be a process that requires tough decisions, But Bohm says there's nothing at all that complicated about balancing the federal budget. Members of Congress don't need special experts or a bipartisan commission to tell them that closing the deficit will require raising taxes or cutting spending or some combination of the two. That's literally all there is to it. No, not really. Your enemy when it comes to this sort of thing is the Laffer curve. You see, it isn't really about raising taxes, it's about raising revenues. And that's not the same thing. So consider if the tax rate were 0%. What are revenues? They're zero, right? No taxes, no revenues. Right? What if the tax rate was 100%? Every dollar everyone ever made, they had to turn it right over to the government. Then what would they be? Well, they'd be zero, right? Or near as damn it. Because everyone would just work under the table. You know, they wouldn't go through all that depending. Oh, no, I didn't make any money last year. Yeah. That's what they would do. So, that means that there's two possibilities. In between 0% and 0% is 0% and it's flat. Does that make sense? That would mean that no government could ever raise any revenues, and that's obviously not true. So, it must be the other possibility, which is that you raise the tax rate and revenues go up, but you raise it too much and they start to plateau. And you're just not going to get any more revenues after that. And then after that, they start to drop off. And at that point, paradoxically, raising taxes would mean less in revenues. So, that's the Laffer curve. Now, Art Laffer never proposed any theoretical way of saying at what point that is. And no economist has ever seemed to come up with a theoretical construct for how you tell where on the Laffer curve you are. But empirically, we know that you just can't seem to get revenues any higher than about 17% of GDP. I mean, for a few years they can be higher, but then for a few years they'll be lower. So that's what it ends up being, around 17-18%. So, paradoxically, if you lower the tax rate, what that does is you're still at the 17% of GDP, but you're making GDP bigger because now people have more money to spend and to invest and everything else. So that's the paradox. You can raise revenues by lowering the tax rate. You really only have this direct correlation between the tax rate and revenues when they're less than 10% of GDP. They're pretty much direct. Once you get above 10%, you start getting those diminishing returns. So it would actually be better if we did that. It would be better if we eliminated the personal income tax entirely, because as I posted on Twitter a while back, you could eliminate the personal income tax, replace it with nothing, and pass, I think it was Barack Obama's 2015 budget, and you could pass that without any deficit. That's how out of control the government's gotten. So imagine if we did that. Imagine what a boon that would be to households and to working people. But H&R Block isn't going to like that. Tax attorneys aren't going to like that. So good luck getting it to happen. But yeah, that would do a lot to solve the problem. Alright, so voters don't like having their taxes raised. They also know that cutting even the most useless and wasteful government spending will spur outrage from whatever special interest group benefits from it. And I made videos about this before as well. It's called the political interest paradox. So the idea is, you've got a program that benefits 1 out of every 10,000 people. Let's just say you're just giving them $10,000 a year. You're cutting them checks. That means for every person receiving $10,000, there are 10,000 taxpayers who have their taxes raised by $1 a year. Now, who has the greater incentive to go to lobby for or against it? The people getting the money have the incentive to go and lobby for it. For everyone else, well, that's just $1 a year. That's hardly worth it. You'd spend a lot more time lobbying against it and a lot more money. And it gets worse the more exclusive that interest group is. So if it's 1 in 100,000, imagine that. You're just given $100,000 a year from the government because you're 1 in 100,000 taxpayers. And for you, there are 100,000 taxpayers who are giving up $1. Again, they don't have that much of an incentive to go and lobby Congress to save that dollar, but you got $100,000 a year coming in. You want to keep it coming in, and you got the money to spare. So you can actually hire a lobbyist or a lobbying firm or whatever and go and lobby for it. You know, you and all of the other people who were just like you, getting that nice $1 million a year. How are you going to get around that? It's just like I was saying about the taxes in H&R Block. You know, the tax attorneys, everyone else, they're going to be opposing that. Because that's a pretty big special interest group. Even just things like streamlining how we pay our taxes. All of that stuff you have to spend all that time figuring out before you send it in on April 15th. The government already has all of that. They could easily have their computers print out the form, filled out already, and mail it to you. And you just go over it and make any corrections and send it in. It could be that easy. But if they made it that easy, you wouldn't need H&R Block, would you? You wouldn't need your tax attorney, would you? That's the situation. So he says the right way to think about a bipartisan commission on the debt is a sort of political suicide pact. It means that members of both parties are committed to, at the very least, proposing ideas for how to balance the budget, and that, in turn, should limit some of the partisan screeching that makes it so hard for Congress to make these decisions under normal circumstances. Both sides will have to take responsibility for putting an end to the government's addiction to borrowing. Will it work? Probably not, but nothing else seems more promising right now, which is sad because that doesn't seem very promising at all. Sadly, it looks like the debt's going to continue, and it really looks like that the speaker is going to be more of the same. I don't know, it's just his first thing. Maybe it's premature, but I don't have high hopes. I'm willing to be pleasantly surprised, but I don't have high hopes for Johnson. You know, they had a couple of other stronger candidates that they could have put in if they were really serious about taking control of the budget and the debt and things like that. And they didn't. In fact, the elites kind of did that behind closed doors vote to make sure that they couldn't get into it. Well, okay, I'm going to wrap it up there. Thank you so very much for watching. Comments for the Common God, shares for the Share Throne. Please hit like, subscribe, and the bell. And as always, go to donate.bogosity.tv. Keep me doing what I do. Keep me doing these videos. Every little bit's appreciated. You have no idea. Really, whatever tiny amount you can send me through Venmo or crypto or whatever, it all helps. And especially if you become a regular supporter and get these videos early and ad-free. Thank you very much. Until next time, stay strong and be free.